Today, I will be talking to you about emerging trends in higher education and some of the work that my organization, the College Board, we are the makers of the SAT test. I'll be covering some of the work that we're doing in India. During the presentation, I will be sharing some poll questions to engage with you. This is my attempt to make this session participatory instead of passive, as one of yesterday's speakers, Rima Loda, explained yesterday in her session on instructional design. So for those of you who are in front of a screen, here is the first question. Arun, if you could please serve up the poll. And the question is, based on a survey conducted in India in 2019 by Mindler, which is an online career counseling platform, what percentage of students were aware of just 7 career options? Note, there are actually more than 250 career options. So if you could please select one of these answers, 72%, 35%, 93%, or 58%. What percentage of students were only aware of 7 career options rather than the vast variety of 250 career options? Arun, I'm not sure if the audience is responding to the poll, or at least I cannot see at my end.
Okay, I'm so sorry, I was on mute. 33%, that's the highest, have responded 35%. 27% say 72%. Okay. 23% feel it's 58%. And 17% of the respondents say 93%.
Okay. Thank you, Arun. So Mindler had surveyed 10,000 students in the age group of 14 to 21 and all across India. And 93% of the students is the actual answer. 93% of the students were aware of just 7 career options. And like I said, there are many, many more career options. Students just need to be made more aware of them. And so when Arun approached me about National Career Awareness Week, I was eager to participate. In the time allocated to me, it would be a tough task for me to cover all the social, technological, economic, environmental, and political trends in higher education in India, US, and around the world. And so for today's session, I have handpicked a few trends that I will cover with you today. The first theme or trend is online learning, a new normal? Note the question. So higher education was transformed in the 19th and 20th centuries to meet the needs of an emerging national analog industrial economy. Today, higher education is again being transformed, this time to serve the needs of a global digital knowledge economy. However, people fundamentally disagree about what form that transformation will take. Harvard University President Lawrence Bacco says higher education will incrementally adapt to changing conditions as it has historically, maintaining its current mission and structure. But in contrast, Harvard Business School professor, the late Clayton Christensen, he argued that the changes will be of such magnitude that they will disrupt higher education as we know it, rendering traditional models obsolete. Now, we are coming out of COVID, but we are seeing a tremendous amount of acceleration of change and transformation in the education industry. Many people say that it is a new world, a new normal, but I think it is not a new world. It is just that we have accelerated some needed changes. There is this evolutionary theory that's quite applicable to this. For some of you students who might be interested in biology, the late Stephen Jay Gould, he's a famous evolutionary biologist. So he had this theory of what he called punctuated equilibrium. It was how evolution worked. The notion that there is this steady state of change that goes on by little tiny steps. And suddenly these little crawling creatures, well, not suddenly, but over time, become 90 feet dinosaurs in a very logical development across eons. And his theory, which seems to bear out, is that evolution tends to be a very slow process, except when it is not. And it is not when something drastic happens, like a giant meteor striking the Earth in what is now the Caribbean basin, and essentially ends the age of the dinosaurs and begins the age of the mammals. The evolution to mammals, he argues, could have possibly happened without the meteor, but it would have happened over a much longer span of time. But what the meteor did was change the balance in a way that evolutionary process was accelerated. I think what we have seen over the past 16 months or so is an example of punctuated equilibrium. Gradual change in higher education greatly accelerated by a particular dramatic effect. Now, I would actually venture to say that the dramatic change that occurred before the pandemic was the development of the internet, as well as the boom of mobile technologies, which I think were equally cosmic events. But it takes something like that to create significant change. The internet created an entirely new ecosystem, an entirely new way to teach and learn. But what COVID-19 did was it took existing systems, particularly online learning, and gave it a huge kick in the pants to accelerate in the nature of a forced march, not in the way of a logical development. But I think change went in two directions. In K-12, everything shifting online, particularly the lower grades, this actually probably has set back the adoption of online learning by a decade. Because in so many respects, it just didn't work well. Everyone is so eager to get back to the classroom. My 11-year-old daughter, Ananya, hated it. And she was eagerly looking forward to return to school in person. But in higher ed, it has had the opposite effect. It has proven that a great deal of what we do face-to-face can be done equally or in key respects more effectively online. And if we combine the best of online with the best of in-person education, we come up with the best combination of educational systems. It did not change the fundamentals of online learning. What it did was it forced everyone to take a much closer look at what they could do online. Even the most pure liberal arts institutions like the Ashoka University, the Flame Universities of India, or the Amherst and the Haverfords in the US are going to be looking at the use of online communities in their residential community to enhance the learning experience for their students. That genie is out of the bottle and it can't be stuffed back in. And everyone has now been forced to drink from that bottle. There will be some institutions that will say, been there, done that, we're cutting the wire, we're going back and doing it the old-fashioned way. And mind you, many of them will succeed in doing so. But the most important thing I'm trying to say over here is we need to work towards to having a faster, better, cheaper system of higher education. And that would mean mixing a lot of processes, both offline and online. The second theme is learning loss or gain. The pandemic has deepened the existing learning crisis. A study in Netherlands of around 350,000 students from the years 2017 to 2020, it records a learning loss of about 3 percentile points with higher losses, up to 60% higher among students from less educated homes. The effect is equivalent to 1/5 of a school year, the same period that schools remained closed during the pandemic. According to studies by the World Bank, UNESCO, and UNICEF, the education disruption was disproportional along the gender divide. In some countries, they are seeing greater learning losses among girls and an increase in their risk of facing child labor and gender-based violence. Similar studies are currently being done in India. A small study was done recently with students in government and private schools in Karnataka, suggesting again, unfortunately, learning loss in both reading and arithmetic, quite high in the lower grades, but even there is some learning loss in the secondary grades. And as students are returning to school, we will see more and more of such studies being conducted across India. Now, it is true that learning was indeed lost as the curriculum could not be covered because of the disruptions. But amidst this learning loss was actually a learning gain, where over and above the curriculum, both teachers and learners learned to be resilient, manage their time better, acquired basic computer skills to learn, and collaborated on various social media platforms. Mind you, all these are very relevant skills that will help students to be better prepared for the future jobs. The third trend I want to speak about is what I call the 60-year curriculum. And I break this trend into sub-trends. So the first sub-trend is the future of work. Now, aspirations of the 21st century youth are in many ways no different than when I was a youth in the 20th century. Young people today want a life secured by a career that sustains them and their families, and that gives them a better and higher standard of living than they were born with. Most youth today still want an assurance of a job when they graduate from school or college. Today's 5-year-olds might be alarmed by what they'd find in a recent report from the Stanford Center on Longevity. It opens with a bit of a promising news that today's 5-year-olds can expect to live to the age of 100. But then that was followed by a haunting prediction that over the course of 100-year lives, we can expect to work 60 years or more. Now, according to Gallup, that has polled people all over the world, the average retirement age is usually 60 to 65. So for most people, 40 or so years of work is more than enough. So the idea of an additional 20 years of work is disconcerting. But if a 60-year career sounds like a nightmare, perhaps that's because we are imagining 60 years of work as it is for many people today. For the sake of the 5-year-olds, as humans live longer and longer, I hope we redesign how we actually work. But the key question over here is, what does a curriculum for a 60-year-long career look like? And that is something education is going to have to tackle. The second theme is new age careers. And Arun, I think I borrowed this phrase from you. I saw this as the title of one of the future sessions. So thank you for that. But I think let me first share my journey, my career journey, and I'll put that into perspective later on. So after graduating from IIT Bombay, I worked as a software engineer building solutions for telecom and logistics companies. Prior to that, I did a summer project at an aerospace company in Bangalore. I left for the United States then to pursue my master's at CMU, Carnegie Mellon University. Over there, my favorite course was language technologies. During campus placements at CMU, I got job offers from an investment bank, an aerospace company, and a management consulting firm. Now, I chose to become a management consultant, even though I did not have any business experience except for these few business courses at CMU. My academic and professional careers have weaved through aerospace engineering, software engineering, language technologies, management consulting, and now I'm in the education space working for a not-for-profit company. Now, I share my story because my story has become much more widespread and common in India. Even as I could not predict what I would do next in my career, in my life, now no one can predict what careers in general are in store for the 21st century youth. All we know is that a young person entering college today will have a host of jobs and career options in front of them that do not exist today or when they graduate. What jobs are going to be available? What skills will be required? How do you train them? How do you prepare them? In a 60-year career, new jobs and new careers will emerge in ever shortening timeframes, certainly in every 5 years or even less. Either one's job or the entire profession will completely disappear, or another attractive and new option will emerge out of the blues. Now, here is where the youth of the 21st century will have very different aspirations than my generation. Today's youth will constantly and continuously shift and execute career pivots every so often. They will have to constantly learn, relearn, unlearn throughout their lives during their 60-year career. Learning to learn will be the most precious skill. The third subtrend is balanced and purposeful jobs. Today's youth want a career that gives them meaning, and they would want this from day one. All of us eventually want this in life, but today's youth no longer want to study what their parents tell them. Nor do they want to work in companies, jobs, functions where they can only make money and earn promotions. They want roles that can make an impact. They want to make a difference. They want to grow and thrive rather than just live and survive. In fact, there is currently a global wave that's going on called the Great Resignation, where young people are resigning and evaluating their jobs. Now, some are definitely changing jobs for better opportunities, but most are saying that they want to reevaluate their life choices. Who they are is more important than what they do. And I'm not talking about the privileged and the wealthy over here, even children from underprivileged backgrounds. And I get this opportunity to meet and talk to students from disadvantaged backgrounds, especially in India. And I see a confidence and a mind of their own. And despite family or financial pressures, they have life aspirations that go beyond just a job and career. And fourth, and the final subtrend is employable skills. A bit of stats over here. The US Chamber of Commerce Foundation's research finds that competencies defined as knowledge and skills that can be observed, measured, or otherwise assessed. Competencies take precedence over academic credentials in the modern economy. In a study in the US, 74% of hiring managers agree that there is a skills gap in the current labor market. Yeah, one of the so-called developed nations in the country, 74% of the hiring managers are finding a skills gap. 48% are saying that candidates lack the skills needed to fill open jobs. And I'm afraid these statistics are far worse in other nations, including India. Last June 2021, McKinsey released a report identifying 56 foundational skills that would help citizens prepare for the future of work and become employable. Their research looked at the kind of jobs that will be lost, as well as those that will be created as automation, AI, and robotics take hold. And it has inferred the type of high-level skills that will become increasingly important as a result. The need for manual and physical skills, as well as basic cognitive ones, will decline. But demand for technological, social, and emotional, higher cognitive skills will grow. Now, as you can see in this sort of matrix-like diagram on the slide, you'll see 4 dimensions in here. And these 4 dimensions, the McKinsey report includes, are cognitive, interpersonal, self-leadership, and digital skills. So these are the 4 sort of umbrella of skills, categories of skills that McKinsey thinks is going to be crucial for employment, for employability. The future of work will depend on how people can add value beyond what can be done by automated systems. That means they have to have empathy, they are digitally fluent, and they can demonstrate resilience to adapt to the new ways of working and the new occupations. Next, I'm going to talk about some work that my company, College Board, that makes the SAT test, and what are we doing in India to streamline the admission space and expand access to low-income students in India to high-quality education opportunities. But first, a little bit about College Board and its programs and services. The College Board is a membership-based organization. We are a not-for-profit organization founded more than a century ago. And many of the universities that the world has come to know as the Ivy League were actually the universities which founded the College Board. These include universities like Columbia, Princeton, and Cornell. And when we were founded in 1899, there was not a common objective metric through which universities could assess students. In many cases, only students who attended wealthy private schools within a certain vicinity of the university would be granted admission. The mission of the College Board at the time was to change that, and through programs like the SAT, provide universities with a common yardstick with which to understand student achievement and accept students into their universities, including students from all over the world and students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Over the last century, the organization has evolved into a global education organization, facilitating the transition from secondary into higher education. Our membership includes 6,000 of the world's leading schools, colleges, and universities, as well as other organizations that support students on the path to college. In terms of the College Board's programs, while we are best known for the SAT, the College Board actually has numerous programs, which includes college readiness assessments like the SAT and PSAT. It also includes curricular programs like AP or advanced placement, and our college planning and recruitment programs, such as our free website called Big Future, with which you can use to plan and select colleges. And lastly, for our educators who are with us today, a host of thought leadership and professional development offerings. So to summarize, the College Board is a not-for-profit, mission-oriented organization that supports students and educators in that transition from secondary into higher education. The College Board's programs are used by nearly 7 million students across 195 countries globally. And when we sort of think about why do so many students engage with College Board programs, the reason is because our programs really play a fairly critical role in helping universities understand a student's readiness for college. You may be aware that many universities around the world, some in India now, but particularly US universities, use what's called a holistic framework to evaluate student applications. Essentially what it means is that there is an attempt to understand the full student and the full set of experiences that the student comes from, not just marks. Now, I'll walk you through this holistic admissions framework very quickly because I think this is very pertinent to what we College Board do in helping universities. And this is a growing trend in India now. There is this move towards just focusing on marks towards this holistic admissions framework. And there are various different components which I'll walk you through them. First is academic accomplishment. Universities want to understand, is the student academically prepared to study at the university? They look at secondary school grades. In the case of students in India, it would be your board exam results. They look at standardized assessment scores from assessments like the SAT. Because the curriculum across different schools, countries, states within a country varies widely, there needs to be a common benchmark across which universities can see how student achievement is across all of these different systems. They may also look at your class rank, but that is just to understand your achievement in the context of your school and in the context of the background that you're coming from. So SAT plays a crucial role in terms of helping universities understand students' academic preparedness for college. The second thing that universities look at is how rigorous was the curriculum, the coursework that the student engaged in. Has the student appropriately challenged themselves to take the most challenging courses that are offered? Universities are looking at what types of courses is the student taking. Now, this is where one of our other programs, AP or Advanced Placement, comes in. AP is considered widely in the United States as the gold standard in terms of rigorous coursework that students can take when they are in secondary school. And so if the student's application or their transcript includes AP courses, universities know that the student has engaged in very rigorous coursework. And lastly, within this second component of the framework is peer achievement. And that is, what is your achievement relative to others in your school? The other thing that universities look at is environmental context. What was the context in which students achieved their success? And I think this is where the admissions process is very different than perhaps what's followed in India to the large extent, although it's changing. Now, what was the context in which students achieved their success? What type of family environment do they come from? What type of responsibilities do they have in their family that is taking up their time, that may not allow you to focus maybe more intently on your studies or pursue activities outside of the classroom? Here, admission officers will rely heavily on school profiles, which is often provided by schools for them to get a sense of the environment of the school and the context in which the student is coming from. And then lastly, which is a fairly important piece, is a set of what is called personal qualities. Do the students' personal qualities meet the university's mission and contribute to the success of the university? Every single university is different across the world, across the country, and every single university has a certain culture. Oftentimes you may hear this term fit. Are you a good fit for the university? Is the university a good fit for you? It just means that the culture is a certain way, the campus is a certain way, and so will the students be successful on those particular campuses because they approach teaching and learning in a certain way. And so the way that admission officers will often kind of evaluate that is by looking at your personal statement. When you talk about what really drives you and what is really important to you. For example, if you say that you learn best in smaller environments, well, if you're applying to a university that has hundreds of thousands of students, then that may not be the best environment for you. It may not be the best fit for you. Letters of recommendation from your teachers, your counselors, and others in your life that have a great influence on you, again, gives admission officers a sense of who you are as a person and how others view you. You are not defined by your marks. You should not be defined by your marks. There's a whole set of other experiences that you have gone through, that you have learned and transformed yourself into this young adult over the last 10, 12 years. And it's this entire set of experiences that the admission officers want to learn about you. Universities want to make sure that when you come onto campus during those 3 or 4 years that you're going to spend there, that you're going to be very successful. If this is not an environment that you're going to fit into, it does not matter how highly ranked the university is. You are not going to be successful there. It is just not worth it. So college boards programs like the SAT and AP play a fairly critical role in helping universities understand the students' academic accomplishments and the rigor that they come from. And so let's move on to our next poll question. Arun, please serve the poll. Thank you. And the question is, how many Indian universities use the SAT for admissions? 20, 13, none, 44, or more than 100? How many Indian universities use the SAT for admissions?
I request everyone to participate in the poll, please.
Arun, if you feel so, we can close the poll.
Sure.
I cannot see the results.
Sorry?
I cannot read the results. So if you could please share the results with me. Wonderful. Okay, so 34% of you selected 44. The next highest is 13, where 28% of you responded. And the correct answer is 44. You can see here the list of universities that the College Board has been working with to expand our work. This started back in 2018, where we made a concerted effort to expand our work with universities across India by establishing what we called the India Global Higher Education Alliance. A key feature of this alliance is that member universities in India agree to accept the SAT as part of their admission process. So today, 44 universities are accepting the SAT. Some leading universities in this list include Ashoka University, Azim Premji University, Flame University, Shiv Nadar University, VIT, Symbiosis, IIM Ranchi for their integrated BBA and MBA program, SRM, Kriya University, OP Jindal Global University, NMIMS, and several others. We also have some public institutions here like Jai Hind, St. Stephen's, and Sophia's College for Women. Many students ask, what is the best way to prepare for the SAT? Now, this is where I think the College Board has innovated itself during the last decade through the redesign of the SAT test and the content, knowledge, and skills that it assesses, as well as its partnership with Khan Academy to deliver high quality practice resources for free. So the good news here is that expensive coaching for SAT is actually not required. The best way to prepare is actually to just focus on what you're learning in the classroom, because the content on the SAT assesses the skills that you're already learning every day. So students, don't forget to listen to your teachers and study hard in your classes. But beyond that, the College Board has partnered with Khan Academy to provide free SAT practice to all students. It's called the official SAT practice through Khan Academy. I know many schools in India that are leveraging this resource. This is an online tool. The practice is personalized to what you as a student really needs to work on. So you can target your practice and focus on the areas where you know you might be a little bit weak rather than continuing to practice skills that you have already mastered. And educators also use this tool to track the performance of their students' SAT preparation. They can get a lot of metrics from the system. If students are taking practice tests, educators can track the performance scores. Educators can track what questions the students are solving, what are the areas of weaknesses, so that the educators can then go into the classroom and do a sort of one-on-one intervention with those students. But what's interesting is that all these practice questions in this free resource, it might be free, but I guarantee you it's of very high quality, because these questions are written by the same people who write the test questions. So you can be sure that they are close to what you will see on test day as possible. But overall, more importantly, again, this is not about just preparing for a test, which unfortunately is still the culture or the climate in India, wherein we're all, this is rat race, we're all studying towards tests and exams and then these admission tests at the end of the day. What we're trying to provide through Khan Academy is a program that builds on necessary skills that we have done the research that has shown that what students really need to be successful in college. It is not just, again, about taking a test. It's about preparing you for college, regardless of whatever score you get. Yes, if you get a great score, wonderful, you can apply to some of the best institutions. If you don't get so great a score, at least you have gone through the program and it has prepared you for the skills that college deems as essential. Now, this is my favorite part of our work in India. One of the things that was really important to the College Board was to make sure that our commitment to access and equity is clear throughout the work that we do, and that students had access to the SAT regardless of their income levels, where they come from, or their class or status. So we offer two programs. This is specifically in India. First is the SAT fee reduction voucher, which allows students from low-income backgrounds to take the SAT at a significant discount. So it is a 90% discount if your family annual income is less than 8 lakhs, and a 50% discount if your family annual income is less than 15 lakhs. Through this, We hope that affordability does not deter students from using the SAT to demonstrate their readiness for college. The second program is called the College Board India Scholars Program, where the College Board partners with Indian universities to fully fund the tuition for any scholarship recipient for the entire duration of their undergraduate program. This is a merit cum needs-based program, and it's only open to students whose family annual income is less than 8 lakhs per year. Other criteria to qualify for the scholarship includes earning an SAT score of at least 1300 out of a total of 1600, and that the student gets admission at one of these participating Indian universities, and that the university nominates the student for the scholarship. So if all these steps fall in place, then the student earns a full tuition waiver for their entire undergraduate program. Again, I want to emphasize this. We are doing this because we don't want affordability to deter any talented student from being able to access high quality higher education in India. I remember the words of our CEO several years ago when he was speaking to a bunch of us in the office, where his dream was that we should be able to find any talented student in the whole world, right, including India, but we should be able to find these talented students who otherwise come from backgrounds that disadvantage them from accessing education opportunities. And given that we are a not-for-profit organization, a mission-oriented organization, we find that it is our duty to be able to spot such talent and then provide them the connection to higher education opportunities. Of course, the student has to do the hard work. They have to study, they have to get good scores, they have to apply to colleges, they have to sit through interviews, and they have to go through all these processes themselves. But we take it upon ourselves to at least simplify and streamline that processes to make it easier for students to apply to universities. The last trend I want to talk about to you, and this will go very quickly, because I know I'm probably the one person who is standing between you and your next exciting speaker. But the last trend I wanted to talk to you about today is international student mobility. Now, this is probably only going to be useful, particularly if you're bound to the US or if you have students that are planning to pursue their higher education in the US. I'm going to present to you a lot of data, but all this data is from a comprehensive report on international student mobility by the Institute of International Education in partnership with the US state government and ECA Bureau. The report is based on a survey of 3,000 US higher education institutions hosting international students. This data is still draft. The official report is supposed to come out in February, but I had a sneak preview of some of this data. And so do take this data with a grain of salt, but this is fairly solid data to build any of your hypotheses. But first, again, here is a poll question. Arun, if you could please help me serve the poll. And the question here is, in the 2020-2021 academic year, that means the last academic year, how many international students that enrolled at US institutions came from India? Yeah, how many of the international students came from India? These include students studying on campus in the US, or they reside in the US but studied remote, or they resided in India and studied remote due to the pandemic. Is it 1,65,000 plus, 2,45,000 plus, 1,10,000 plus, or 1,95,000 plus?
Ten more seconds for everyone to respond. I think we can do better. Can I close the poll?
Yes, Arun. Feel free to close the poll. All right. So 43% of you selected the second option. That's 2,45,000. what's the next size? 26% selected 1,95,000. 18% of you selected option A, and 13% of you selected option C. The correct answer is option A. It's actually close to be precise, 167,500 odd students. And mind you, this number is a little smaller because of the pandemic reasons, and so there were a lot of students who decided to defer their admissions. Otherwise, the number is usually higher on any other regular year. Here is a second poll question. Arun, again, if you could please serve the poll, thank you. So the question is, after China and India, which country sends the greatest number of students to US for higher education? Just to paraphrase it again, which country is the third in the list that sends the greatest number of students? I'll already tell you, number one is China, number two is India, but which of these four countries is the third in the list? Is it Japan, Canada, France, or South Korea?
Closing the poll in 5 seconds.
Awesome. So 28% of you, sorry, 31% of you said South Korea, 28% Japan, 24% Canada, 17% France. A fairly even distribution over there. The correct response here is South Korea. Some of you may have thought Canada because Canada is a neighbor to US, so perhaps many more students come from there. Canada actually has a fairly strong higher education system themselves, but Canada is definitely in the top 5 or top 10 of the countries that send their students to the US. But South Korea follows China and India. So US in the academic year 2020-2021, US hosted 914,095 international students. And this represents a decrease of 15%, again, primarily due to the pandemic. But this total number over here includes all levels of studies, including undergraduate or graduate or diploma programs. Over the past several years, as you can see in this chart, there has actually been a significant growth in the international students at US colleges and universities. But then there has been this leveling off in that last 2 to 3 years. However, we then see that 15% decline. That was quite a shock to the number of international students at US institutions. Of the 15% decline due to the pandemic, when the researchers dived deeper into the data, they actually found that the decrease was primarily due to new students. So new students, those who are applying for their freshman year, their first year of college, those new students declined by 46%. Whereas the continuing students, those students who are enrolling into their sophomore or junior or senior year, second, third, or fourth year in college, those students only declined by only 3%. So many actually continued their enrollment and were committed to their US education, but it was the new students who chose not to come to the US. They either deferred their admission or they decided to wait a year, again, because of the pandemic. International students to the US come from 200 countries. The top 3 countries, as I mentioned to you earlier, are China, India, and South Korea. China and India combined continue to make up over half of all the international students in the US. And of that 15%, that was across the total number of international students in the US. These are the respective declines from these respective countries. So amongst the students from China, that number declined by 15%. It declined by 13% in the case of India, and a 21% decline in the case of South Korea. A quick look at disciplines and the makeup of students over there. 54% of all international students in US studied in a STEM field. Engineering and math and computer science were the top fields of study. This is consistent to past years. 1 in 5 students study engineering, 1 in 5 study math and computer science. Business and management continues to be the third most popular course of study, followed by social sciences and physical and life sciences, which have seen steady increases over the past 10 years. Now, this was academic year 2020-2021, the last year. But what happened recently in fall 2021? That means at the start of the ongoing 2021-2022 academic year. In fall 2021, we see a recovery or rebound from that 15% decrease we saw last year. Institutions are now seeing a 4% bump or increase in the number of total international enrollments. And the increase is again driven by the new students. This time, the new students have now increased by 68%. Having said that, the numbers are still not quite back to the total number of international students in prior years. There continues to be some deferred students this fall, but certainly overall, it's painting an optimistic picture in terms of potentially where we are going in terms of a recovery. Institutions are focusing more on in-person study this year or this fall. Last fall, so last year, academic years, that fall, predominantly instructions were reported as being done through a hybrid model or virtual instruction only. But starting from fall 2021, over a quarter of institutions are saying that they are going to conduct classes in person only. That's a really big difference. And it really speaks to the recovery as well as to the commitment to in-person study. I think this is my last stat for the day, but US institutions are prioritizing international student recruitment. So this is probably good news for the rest of the world if US is their destination of higher education, particularly those from India and China. And you can see India at the top of that list. 55% of the universities are fairly interested in recruiting students from India, followed by China, etc. And even more importantly, 77% of the institutions have indicated financial support for international recruitment, which is the same or actually even higher than previous years. With that, thank you.